Have you ever hated someone so much that just hearing their name made your blood boil, only to realize they would become the most important person in your life? I never imagined my biggest rival would be the one to steal my heart. At first, we couldn't stand each other. Every practice ended in an argument. Every game became a competition. We pushed each other harder than anyone else ever had. But everything changed the day the entire school discovered a secret that neither of us was ready to share. By then, it was already too late to turn back. This is the story of how my greatest rival became the love of my life. The first day of senior year was supposed to be exciting. Our soccer team had just lost its captain to graduation, and everyone expected Coach Williams to announce the new leader before practice. I stood beside the field, trying to ignore the nervous feeling twisting inside my stomach. My name is Ethan Brooks. I've played for Westbrook High since freshman year, and soccer has always been the one place where I felt like I belonged. Think it'll be you? My best friend Noah asked, nudging my shoulder. I shrugged, pretending not to care. I just want whoever deserves it. Noah laughed. You're terrible at pretending. Before I could answer, Coach Williams blew his whistle. The entire team gathered around him. I've made my decision, he announced. This year's leadership will be different. The players exchanged confused looks. Instead of one captain, he paused. We're having two. The whispers grew louder. Your co-captains are. He looked directly at me. Ethan Brooks. A wave of excitement rushed through me. Then Coach continued. And Jay Carter. The excitement disappeared almost instantly. Jay? Of all people, Jay Carter was the last person I wanted to share anything with. He was talented, fast, confident, and unbelievably stubborn. If I believed discipline won matches, Jay believed pure instinct was enough. Our arguments during practice had become legendary. Coach expected us to work together. I wasn't sure that was even possible. Jay walked over with his usual confident grin. Looks like we're stuck together. I folded my arms. Don't get used to giving orders. He smirked. I was about to say the same thing. The team laughed. Coach didn't. If you two can't work together, he said firmly, this team doesn't stand a chance this season. Neither of us replied. But deep down, I had a feeling this was only the beginning, and I had no idea that one decision would change both of our lives forever. The next afternoon, practice started exactly the way I expected. Jay and I disagreed on almost everything. We should focus on passing drills first, I said, gathering the team into position. Jay shook his head. No. Our attack is too slow. We need speed drills if we want to win our first match. Several teammates looked from him to me, unsure whose instructions to follow. Coach Williams blew his whistle before the argument could get worse. Enough. Silence fell across the field. If the two of you keep pulling this team in opposite directions, you'll drag everyone down with you. Neither of us said a word. Coach crossed his arms. Since you can't seem to agree, you're staying after practice. Together. A few players let out quiet laughs. Jay sighed dramatically. Great. I wasn't exactly thrilled either. The rest of practice was awkward. Whenever I suggested a strategy, Jay challenged it. Whenever Jay tried something different, I pointed out the flaws. By the end of practice, everyone looked exhausted, not from training, but from listening to us argue. As the rest of the team headed toward the locker rooms, Coach stopped us. You're not leaving, Jay groaned. Coach tossed each of us a bag filled with soccer cones and training equipment. Set up a practice course. Together. He emphasized the last word. Without another explanation, he walked back toward his office. Jay looked at me. So, how do we do this? I shrugged. We work. For the next 20 minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence was almost worse than the arguing. Eventually, Jay broke it. You know. I kept placing cones on the field. You're even more serious than people say. I glanced at him. And you're even more annoying. He laughed. To my surprise, it wasn't an arrogant laugh. It sounded genuine. I'll take that as a compliment. I rolled my eyes but couldn't stop the tiny smile that appeared on my face. Once the course was ready, we began testing it ourselves. We raced through dribbling drills, passing exercises, and shooting challenges. To my frustration, Jay was good, really good. He moved effortlessly across the field, making difficult plays look easy. When my turn came, I beat his time by only a second. Jay checked the stopwatch and smiled. Not bad. I blinked. Was that praise? You weren't terrible either, I admitted. His grin widened. I knew you'd come around eventually. Don't push it. As the sun began to set, dark clouds gathered overhead. A cool breeze swept across the empty field. Jay looked up. I think we're about to get soaked. Right on cue, rain began to fall. Within seconds, it turned into a heavy downpour. We grabbed the equipment and sprinted toward the gym, laughing despite ourselves. By the time we reached shelter, both of us were completely drenched. Jay brushed the wet hair out of his eyes. You know. What? That was actually fun. I stared at him. For the first time since we'd met, he didn't seem like my rival. He just seemed like another guy who loved soccer as much as I did. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Noah. Careful around Jay. People are already taking sides. I looked back at Jay, who was stacking the last of the equipment. Maybe Noah was right. Maybe becoming friends with my biggest rival was a bad idea. Please subscribe to Sweet Tales and like this video. But as I watched him quietly humming to himself, completely unaware of the rumors beginning to spread, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was far more to Jay Carter than anyone at school realized. And somehow, I wanted to find out. The next week, the rumors had spread through almost every hallway at Westbrook High. They'll never make it through the season. I heard Ethan and Jay almost got into a fight. Coach should have picked just one captain. Every whisper seemed to follow us. Jay acted like he didn't hear any of it. I wished I could do the same. On Wednesday morning, our homeroom teacher walked to the front of the class with a stack of papers. Everyone, we'll be starting a leadership project today. You'll work in pairs, and your presentation will count toward your final grade. The room buzzed with excitement. My stomach tightened. Please don't let it be. Jay Carter and Ethan Brooks. The class burst into laughter. Someone at the back called out, "Good luck surviving each other." Jay looked over at me and smirked. Looks like we can't escape each other. I sighed. I was just thinking the same thing. After school, we met in the library to plan our project. The silence between us felt less awkward than it had before. So, Jay said, opening his notebook, "What's our topic?" I glanced at the assignment sheet. "What makes a good leader?" Jay leaned back in his chair. "Easy." "Oh, a good leader inspires people." I shook my head. "A good leader earns respect." Jay smiled. "Maybe both." For the first time, we weren't arguing. We were actually listening to each other. Hours passed without either of us noticing. We researched famous teams, took notes, and even joked about how serious Coach Williams could be. When the library announced it was closing, we packed our bags. "You hungry?" Jay asked. "I skipped lunch." "So did I." He pointed across the street. "There's a small burger place. My treat. I can pay for my own food." "I know." He smiled. "But I invited you." After a moment, I nodded. "Okay." The restaurant wasn't crowded. We found a booth near the window as rain tapped softly against the glass outside. For a while, we talked about soccer, then music, then movies. The conversation felt easy. Nothing like the constant arguments we'd had on the field. As we finished eating, Jay's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. The smile disappeared from his face. "You okay?" I asked. He locked the phone immediately. "Yeah." But his voice sounded different, quieter. A few seconds later, another message arrived. Jay stood up. "I should go." "You sure?" "Yeah." He forced a smile. "See you tomorrow." Before I could say anything else, he hurried out into the rain. The next afternoon, Jay didn't show up for practice. Coach looked worried. "No one has heard from him." The team exchanged nervous glances. Practice felt strange without him. There were no sarcastic comments. No playful challenges. No arguments. Just Silence. As practice ended, Coach called me over. Ethan. Yes, Coach? He handed me a folder. Jay left this yesterday. Inside were our leadership project notes. Everything was perfectly organized. He stayed up late finishing most of the work, Coach said quietly. I frowned. Why would he do that? Coach hesitated. Jay doesn't like people knowing what happens outside school. Before I could ask what he meant, Coach simply said, if you care about your teammate, check on him. That evening, I stood outside Jay's house with the project folder in my hands. The lights inside were on. I took a deep breath and knocked. A few moments later, the door slowly opened. Jay stood there wearing a hoodie, looking exhausted. There was a small bruise near his jaw. He noticed me staring and quickly turned his face away. What are you doing here? He asked softly. I came to see if you were okay. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jay looked down at the ground. His confident smile was gone. I don't think I've ever been okay. Jay stood in the doorway, his hand still resting on the doorknob. I don't think I've ever been okay. The words hung in the air. For the first time since we'd met, he wasn't hiding behind a joke or a confident smile. He just looked tired. I held up the project folder. You left this at school. Jay glanced at it and let out a small laugh. I guess I did. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he stepped aside. You might as well come in. His house was quiet. Too quiet. The living room was neat but worn, and the walls were almost bare. There weren't any family photos or decorations like there were at my house. Jay noticed me looking around. Sorry. It's not much. You don't have to apologize. He gave a faint smile and led me into the kitchen. I can make hot chocolate. You don't have to. I know. He shrugged. But I want to. As the kettle heated, we stood in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable anymore. Felt peaceful. When we sat down with our mugs, I finally asked the question that had been on my mind. That bruise. Jay looked away. I bumped into something. I raised an eyebrow. He sighed. I knew you wouldn't believe that. He wrapped both hands around his mug. My dad lost his job almost a year ago. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. Things have been hard since then. He's frustrated all the time. Jay paused. Sometimes, he says things he doesn't mean. His voice grew softer. And sometimes those words hurt more than people realize. I understood what he was telling me. He didn't need to explain every detail. You don't deserve that, I said quietly. Jay looked at me surprised. No one's ever said that to me before. A few minutes later, his younger sister walked into the kitchen. She couldn't have been older than 10. Jay. She smiled when she saw me. Oh, Jay's face changed instantly. The heavy sadness disappeared, replaced by the warm smile I had seen at school. This is my sister, Lily. Hi, I said with a wave. Lily giggled. You're the soccer captain. One of them. I laughed. She looked at Jay. I told you you'd make a friend. Jay's cheeks turned slightly pink. We're teammates. Lily smiled mischievously. If you say so. Jay groaned. Lily. She laughed and ran back down the hallway. I couldn't help smiling. You really care about her. Jay looked toward the hallway. She's the reason I keep going. When it was time for me to leave, Jay walked me to the front door. Thanks for coming. I didn't do much. You listened. He looked down at the ground. Most people only know the version of me that's loud and confident. He looked back at me. You saw the real me. I met his eyes. And I'm not going anywhere. For a second, neither of us spoke. The evening breeze rustled the trees between us. Jay smiled. A real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. I think you're the first person who's ever made me believe that. The next day at school, something had changed. During practice, Jay laughed more. He encouraged the younger players. He even admitted when one of my strategies worked better than his. Coach Williams watched us from the sidelines with a satisfied smile. Now that's what leadership looks like. The team was finally starting to come together. But not everyone was happy. As practice ended, I noticed one of our teammates, Mason, watching us from across the field. He folded his arms, his expression unreadable. "So that's what's going on," he muttered under his breath. Before I could ask what he meant, he turned and walked away. I had no idea that the rumors about Jay and me were about to spread faster than ever. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen at Jay's house. The confident smile he wore at school, the jokes he made during practice, the fearless attitude everyone admired. It was all a mask. Behind closed doors, Jay carried burdens no one else could see. I had promised not to tell anyone, and I intended to keep that promise. When I arrived at school, Jay was already sitting in our classroom. He looked up as I walked in. For a brief moment our eyes met. Then, almost shyly, he smiled. It wasn't the loud, confident grin everyone was used to. It was small, real. I smiled back. Across the room, Noah noticed. His eyebrows shot up. After class, he caught up with me in the hallway. "Ethan," he said quietly, "what's going on between you and Jay? What do you mean? You've been spending a lot of time together. We're co-captains and project partners." I nodded. "That's all." Noah studied my face for a moment. "If you say so." Soccer practice was different that afternoon. For the first time all season, Jay and I weren't arguing. We worked together without even thinking about it. "If I move left," Jay said during a passing drill, "you'll have an open shot." I nodded. "Got it." The play worked perfectly. Coach Williams blew his whistle. "That's what I've been waiting to see." The rest of the team applauded. Even the players who had doubted us looked impressed. Jay bumped his shoulder against mine with a grin. "See? We make a pretty good team." I laughed.
"Iges vedo."
Neither of us noticed that several teammates were watching and whispering. By lunchtime, the rumors had spread again. Only this time, they were different. I heard Ethan and Jay are best friends now. No way. They hated each other. My cousins saw them eating together after school. I heard they're always together. Every table in the cafeteria seemed to have its own version of the story. I tried to ignore it. Jay did too. But whispers have a way of growing louder. That Friday, the soccer team traveled to an away game. The bus ride was filled with music, laughter, and nervous excitement. When Ethan boarded, the only empty seat was next to Jay. Jay looked up from his headphones. "Looks like you're stuck with me." Ethan chuckled as he sat down. "I think I'm getting used to that." During the drive, they talked about everything except soccer. Favorite movies, music, childhood memories. For the first time, Ethan realized just how easy it was to talk to Jay. Somewhere along the way, his rival had become his closest friend. The team won the match 3-1. As everyone celebrated, a teammate pulled out his phone. "Everyone squeeze in." The team gathered for a victory photo. Without thinking, Jay threw an arm around Ethan's shoulders. The camera flashed. No one thought much of it. Until Monday morning. Someone had posted the photo on the school's social media page. Most students simply congratulated the team, but others focused on one thing: the way Jay and Ethan were smiling at each other. The comments started appearing almost immediately. "They're closer than I thought." "Are they dating?" "Look at the way they're looking at each other." By first period, nearly everyone in school had seen it. Ethan's phone buzzed nonstop. Jay's wasn't any quieter. Neither of them knew what to say. After practice that afternoon, Jay sat alone on the bleachers. Ethan walked over and sat beside him. "You've been quiet all day." Jay stared out at the empty field. "I've dealt with rumors before." He sighed. "But this feels different." Ethan looked at him. "Does it bother you?" Jay was silent for a long moment. Finally, he answered. "It only bothers me because—" He stopped himself. "Because what?" Jay turned toward Ethan, his expression unusually serious. "Because I'm starting to care about what you think." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Before he could respond, someone snapped a photo from across the field. "You disappeared." Jay gave a small shrug. "I just needed some quiet." Ethan sat beside him. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Jay broke the silence. Can I ask you something? Of course. If people keep talking. He hesitated. Are you going to stop being my friend? Ethan looked at him in disbelief. Why would I do that? Because it's easier. Ethan shook his head. I've spent too much time getting to know the real you. A smile slowly appeared on Jay's face. I'm not walking away because of rumors. Jay looked down at the floor, trying to hide the emotion in his eyes. Thank you. A few days later, the team volunteered at a community soccer clinic for younger children. The kids couldn't have cared less about school gossip. They only cared about playing. One little boy ran up to Jay. Mr. J, will you teach me that cool trick you did? Jay laughed. Only if Ethan helps. The boy grabbed Ethan's hand. Please. The afternoon was filled with laughter. Jay patiently showed the children new skills, cheering every small success. Watching him, Ethan realized something. The confident boy everyone thought they knew, the one who argued, joked, and acted fearless. He also had the kindest heart Ethan had ever seen. And somewhere along the way, Ethan had stopped seeing Jay as his rival. He had started looking for him in every room, looking forward to every conversation, every smile, every laugh. The realization hit him all at once. I'm falling for him. The thought scared him. He wasn't sure what it meant. He wasn't even sure if Jay felt the same way. But he knew one thing. These feelings weren't going away. As the sun began to set, the team packed up after the clinic. The younger children waved goodbye. One little girl hugged both Ethan and Jay at the same time. You two are best friends. She smiled brightly before running back to her parents. Jay chuckled. I guess she's not wrong. Ethan smiled. No, she's not. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same equipment bag. Neither of them pulled away immediately. For a brief second, the world around them seemed to disappear. Then footsteps echoed behind them. Mason stood a few meters away, staring. His expression was impossible to read. So, he said quietly, I knew the rumors weren't completely made up. Before either of them could respond, Mason turned and walked away. Jay's smile faded. I don't think this is over. Ethan watched Mason disappear into the parking lot. A feeling of unease settled in his chest. Something told him the hardest part of their story was only just beginning. The days leading up to the regional championship should have been exciting. Instead, they were filled with whispers. Every time Ethan and Jay walked through the halls together, conversations stopped. Some students smiled. Others stared. A few even took pictures. Ethan tried to ignore it, but it was becoming harder every day. On Thursday afternoon, Coach Williams gathered the team before practice. The championship is this Saturday. He looked at every player. We've worked too hard to let distractions ruin what we've built. The team nodded. This is about trust. If you trust the person standing beside you, you'll have a chance to win. Ethan glanced at Jay. Jay smiled back. For a moment, everything felt normal again. After practice, Ethan headed to the locker room to grab his backpack. As he reached his locker, he heard voices around the corner. I don't think this team needs two captains. It was Mason. Another teammate answered. You think Coach made a mistake? I know he did. Ethan stayed where he was, listening. Mason continued. Ever since Jay and Ethan became friends, everyone's focused on them instead of soccer. What are you going to do? Mason lowered his voice. I'll make sure the team's attention goes back where it belongs. The next morning, Ethan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. He opened the team group chat. It's the result of every early morning, every late practice, and every sacrifice you've made. He looked at Ethan and Jay. Lead them. The two co-captains exchanged a determined nod. The match began at a blistering pace. Their opponents were fast, organized, and relentless. By halftime, Westbrook High was losing 2-0. The locker room was silent. Some players stared at the floor. Others looked ready to give up. Coach Williams stepped aside. Ethan, Jay, this is your team. Jay looked around the room. We've come back before. A few players lifted their heads. Ethan stepped forward. Forget the scoreboard. Play for each other. Trust the person beside you. The words echoed through the room. The same lesson coach had repeated all season. One by one, the players stood. "We're with you, Captain." "No." Jay smiled. "Captains." The team laughed. The tension was finally broken. The second half was completely different. Every pass found its target. Every player fought for every ball. With 15 minutes left, Ethan scored the first goal. The crowd erupted. 5 minutes later, Jay curled a perfect shot into the top corner. 2-2. The stadium shook with cheers. Only minutes remained. In the final moments of the match, Ethan sprinted down the left side of the field. 2 defenders closed in. He could take the shot himself, or trust Jay. Without hesitation, he passed the ball. Jay met it perfectly. Instead of shooting immediately, he drew the goalkeeper toward him. Then he passed it straight back. Ethan understood instantly. One touch, one strike. The ball flew into the net. Goal. The final whistle echoed across the stadium. Westbrook High had won the championship. Players rushed onto the field, celebrating. Coach Williams smiled proudly. "You two finally figured it out." Ethan laughed. "Took us long enough." As cameras flashed and the crowd cheered, Jay turned toward Ethan. "You know, if you hadn't come this morning, I don't think I would have been able to play." Ethan smiled. "I'm just glad I didn't lose my best friend." Jay looked at him for a long moment. His eyes softened. "I think." Before he could finish, reporters and teammates surrounded them with congratulations. The moment slipped away, but Ethan could tell. Jay had been about to say something important, something that would change everything. The celebration lasted long after the final whistle. Students poured onto the field, cheering for the team. The championship trophy was passed from player to player as cameras flashed from every direction. For the first time all season, everyone was smiling. Even Coach Williams looked like he was trying not to. "You earned this," he said. "Every single one of you." The team erupted into cheers once again. As the excitement settled, the school principal stepped onto a small stage near the field. "I'd like to congratulate our regional champions." The crowd applauded. "But before we end today's celebration, there's one more matter that needs to be addressed." The stadium grew quiet. The principal continued. "Earlier this week, false messages were shared online in an attempt to divide members of this team." Whispers spread through the crowd. "Our school investigated the incident." He paused. "We have confirmed that the messages were fabricated." A wave of surprise swept through the stands. The student responsible has admitted to creating and sharing them. All eyes turned as Mason slowly stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. His shoulders were slumped, and he couldn't meet anyone's eyes. He began quietly. "I'm sorry." He looked at Ethan. "I was jealous." Then at Jay. "I thought if you two stopped trusting each other, I'd finally get my chance to lead." He swallowed hard. "I was wrong." Coach Williams stepped beside him. "What Mason did hurt people." He looked at the team. "But choosing honesty now is the first step toward making things right." Mason nodded. "I know some of you may never forgive me." He turned and walked away, leaving the field in silence. As the crowd began to disperse, Ethan finally found Jay standing near the empty bleachers. The noise of the celebration faded into the distance. "It's over," Ethan said. Jay smiled softly. "Yeah." For a few moments, they simply stood together, watching the sun begin to set behind the stadium. "I've been trying to find the right words," Jay admitted. "So have I," Ethan replied. Jay let out a nervous laugh. "That's new for me." Ethan smiled. "For me too." Jay took a deep breath. "When we first became co-captains, I couldn't stand you." Ethan laughed. "I noticed. You challenged me. You never treated me like I was better than everyone else." Jay looked down before meeting Ethan's eyes again. "And then, you became the first person who saw the real me." Ethan's heart raced. "I've never been good at talking about my feelings." Jay smiled nervously. "So I'll just say it. I like you, Ethan. Not just as my teammate, Not just as my best friend. I've fallen in love with you. The world seemed to stand still. Ethan felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. He stepped closer. You know what the funniest part is? Jay shook his head. I was trying to figure out how to tell you the exact same thing. A look of disbelief crossed Jay's face. Really? Ethan nodded. I love the way you never give up. I love the way you protect the people you care about. And I love the real Jay. The one behind the smile. Jay's eyes filled with tears. So, Ethan said with a grin, does this mean my biggest rival finally stole my heart? Jay laughed through his tears. I think he did. He reached out and Ethan took his hand. They stood there together, smiling, as the last rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the field. For the first time, neither of them felt the need to hide. Just then, Coach Williams walked by, noticed them talking, and smiled. I'm proud of both of you. Not because you won the championship, but because you learned what being a true teammate means. Ethan and Jay thanked him. As Coach walked away, he called back with a grin. And don't be late for graduation rehearsal on Monday. The two of them laughed. They had no idea that graduation would mark the beginning of an entirely new chapter in their lives. A few weeks passed after the championship. The rumors that had once filled the hallways slowly disappeared. This time, people weren't talking about gossip. They were talking about the incredible comeback in the regional final. The team that had nearly fallen apart had become champions. Graduation day arrived faster than anyone expected. The school gymnasium was decorated with blue and silver banners, and rows of chairs stretched across the polished floor. Families filled the seats, cameras ready. Students in graduation gowns laughed, hugged one another, and promised to stay in touch. Ethan adjusted his graduation cap and looked around. It was strange knowing this chapter of his life was coming to an end. Looking for someone? Ethan turned and smiled. Jay stood beside him, wearing his own graduation gown, his cap slightly crooked as always. You still can't wear that thing properly, Ethan teased. Jay laughed. I figured you'd fix it. Ethan reached over and straightened the cap. There. Perfect. Jay smiled. I knew I could count on you. The ceremony began. One by one, students crossed the stage to receive their diplomas. When Ethan's name was called, the soccer team erupted into cheers from the back of the gym. Coach Williams even stood to applaud. A few moments later, Jay Carter. The applause was just as loud. As Jay accepted his diploma, his eyes found Ethan in the crowd. They exchanged a smile that said everything words couldn't. After the ceremony, families gathered outside the school for photos. Noah walked over carrying 2 cold drinks. I have to admit, he said with a grin, I never thought you two would become friends. Jay laughed. Neither did we. Noah looked between them. You're good for each other. Ethan smiled. Thanks. Before leaving, Noah pulled Ethan into a quick hug. Don't forget us when you're famous. No promises, Ethan joked. They all laughed. As the sun began to set, the school grounds slowly emptied. Only a handful of graduates remained. Ethan and Jay wandered back to the soccer field one last time. The stadium lights were off. The field was quiet. It looked exactly as it had the day they first became co-captains. Jay walked to the center circle and stopped. Funny, isn't it? What is? This is where we argued over everything. Ethan laughed. And now? Jay stepped closer. Now it's where I realized I never wanted to face life without you. Ethan felt his heart race. I was so convinced you were my enemy. So was I. They both laughed. Jay reached into his backpack and pulled out a brand new soccer ball. Written across it in black marker were the signatures of every teammate. Across the center was one sentence. Real champions play for each other. Jay handed it to Ethan. I wanted you to have it. Ethan looked at the message and smiled. I'll keep it forever. The evening breeze swept across the field. In the distance, the school bell rang one final time. Their high school days were officially over. So, Jay said, ready for college? As long as you're there. Jay grinned. Good. Because we got accepted to the same university. Ethan laughed. I had a feeling you'd say that. Jay looked toward the horizon. We'll have new classes, new teammates, a new city, but one thing won't change. He turned back to Ethan. I'll still be right beside you. Ethan reached for Jay's hand. I wouldn't want it any other way. They walked off the field together, hand in hand, leaving behind the place where their rivalry had begun, and stepping toward a future they would build together. People often ask when our story really started. Was it the day we became co-captains? The day we stopped arguing? The championship? Or the day we confessed our feelings? The truth is, our story started the moment we chose to see each other for who we really were. Not as rivals, not as rumors, not as the people everyone expected us to be. Just Ethan and Jay. Sometimes the person you least expect changes your life the most. My biggest rival didn't just steal my heart. He taught me that trust is stronger than fear, kindness is stronger than pride, and love grows when two people choose to stand beside each other, even when the world tells them not to. And if I had the chance to live it all again, I'd choose him, every single time. The end. Subscribe and like this video.